Honourable members, the prayer. Lord, the God of righteousness and truth, grant to our King, to his government, the members of the Legislative Assembly, and to all in positions of responsibility, the guidance of your Spirit. May they never lead the province wrongly through love of power, desire to please, or unworthy ideas, but laying aside all private interest and prejudice, keep in mind their responsibility to seek to improve the condition of all. Amen. Honourable members, as is our custom, we pay tribute to former members of this Assembly who have recently passed. Honourable Hugh Planch served 3 consecutive terms as the Progressive Conservative member for Calgary-Glenmore from 1975 to 1986. During his maiden speech, Hugh expressed the honour he felt speaking to this legislature on behalf of Calgary-Glenmore. He emphasized that his constituency's philosophy of fostering a prosperous environment and described the concept of equal opportunity to share in Alberta's future as an exciting challenge. Mr. Planche chaired the Select Committee reviewing interprovincial trucking regulations, which completed its mandate in 1977. He was the government whip in 1979, and later that year was appointed the Minister of Economic Development, a role he held until his retirement from provincial politics. Born in Calgary, Hugh completed his Bachelor of Commerce at the University of Alberta in 1952. He was described as an articulate business person, holding a number of executive positions in private industry both before and after his time in office. Hugh passed away on December 15th, 2024 at the age of 93. I now ask that in a moment of silent prayer or reflection, you remember Hugh Planche. Each of you may have known him. Rest eternal, grant unto him, O Lord, and let light perpetual shine upon him. Amen. Honourable members, we will now be said in the singing of our royal anthem, God Save the King, by Mr. Sidney Manning.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King.
Please be seated. Just turn that upside down if you don't mind.
Introduction of visitors.
Hello, members. It's my pleasure to rise today to introduce the family members of the Honourable Hugh Planche. Members, we all know the deep debt of gratitude that all of us owe to those who pay the special sacrifice of public service in the service of our families as we have the opportunity to serve Albertans. And so it's my great pleasure today, and earlier this afternoon I was able to present the flag that flew on the legislature, the Alberta flag flying on top of the legislature building on the day of Hugh's passing, to his lovely wife Sylvia, his son Don, and his daughter-in-law Jeannie. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Introduction of guests.
Well, members, there are few introductions that I look forward to as much as this one. This person and I share a deep personal connection and a real sense of shared commitment to steering individuals in the right direction, to encouraging good conduct. Honorable members, the mother of the honorable member for Edmonton Gold Bar, Mrs. Sandra Schmidt. She has logged in many more hours than I have of trying to corral him, but we share that in common. Honorable members, I also have the great pleasure of introducing a school group from the great, outstanding constituency of Olds Didsbury Three Hills. They are students and families of a wonderful school in the outstanding constituency of Olds Didsbury Three Hills. Students and families of Knee Hill Christian School, please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. But not least, from me, prior to beginning the clock of what I know will be a rambunctious round of introductions in light of the galleries today, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to the Assembly a very important group of individuals who play a key role in the democratic process here in the province of Alberta. They are our constituency staff and are often the first point of contact for people and communities where we serve. Working in a constituency office can be rewarding, but at certain times, very, very challenging and extremely demanding, and that's mostly when interacting with members. They are here today participating in the annual Spring Constituency Employee Learning and Development Seminar, which is used to develop their unique roles and requirements in mind. The seminar provides an opportunity for them to network and obtain an overview of the very numerous programs, both available through the Legislative Assembly Office of Alberta, as well as the Government of Alberta. We had a lunch earlier today where we were able to recognize some long service members or long service constituency staff who have served over a number of years, including two who have served a decade of their life to members here in the Assembly and to Albertans by extension. I would like to first ask these two individuals to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly, and then we'll follow that by the remainder of the constituency association or the constituency staff. It's my pleasure to ask Claire McDonald, the member, serving the member of Edmonton City Centre, and Heather Paget, the serving Brooks Medicine Hat. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. If you'll continue to thank all the rest of the constituency staff, please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. We don't have all day. Now, honorable members, as I mentioned, there are a number of introductions, so I encourage you to keep them as brief as possible. Good news for the Assembly is that none of the time has been used by the Speaker because a special allotment for the introductions is provided for him. We will begin with another school group today, the Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to you and the rest of the Assembly, some students, teachers, and parent volunteers from Crescent Valley Elementary School in Hinton. I had a chance to meet with them a little while ago, might have snuck them through my office and have a picture with them, and folks in Hinton can be rest assured that their future is bright in the hands of the next generation. I ask the students, teachers, and parents to please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce to you and through you to all members of the Assembly. You've already mentioned the hardworking constituency assistants who support all of us, but I have to say that in my office in particular, there's often more negative than positive that comes in, and my two constituency assistants do an amazing job of representing me as well as addressing those problems. You've already introduced the longest-serving Heather Pickett. I would ask her to stand, as well as Danielle Williams, who's doing an amazing job supporting me. Please give them a warm welcome to the Assembly.
The honourable member for Cypress, Medicine Hat.
It's an honor to rise and introduce to you and through you a number of great folks. One is my constituency assistant, Della Burkett, who's been an absolute amazing asset in the office. Another one is Terry Ann Bauer, who was unable to attend. She's, I think, the best constituency manager in the province. And lastly is Danielle Williams, a dear family friend who I've known since high school. Thank you. Please rise and receive
The honourable member for Edmonton Highlands, Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce Ryder Richard, a constituent of Edmonton Meadows and an advocate for disabled athletes. He runs his own organization, Trans Inclusive Athletes of Alberta. He's also an advocate for those with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and May 1st marks the start of Ehlers-Danlos Awareness Month. Please give Ryder the welcome he deserves.
The honourable member for Edmonton West Henday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to you, through you, I'd like to introduce a very special guest of mine, the phenomenal Becky Best Birtwistle, a university friend of mine who I would not be here without her support, and my wonderful constituency assistant, Kate Pugh, who was here earlier this week, and my part-time Boda Mar, who is also my temp right now in my office. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of this Assembly.
The honourable member for Camrose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was very honoured to meet some folks from Sierra Leone earlier today. Thank you to my colleagues who were able to join us. I think they're watching from our office, so hello everyone and welcome. If you would please stand, we can give you a warm welcome from the chamber.
The honourable member for Livingston McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you and all members of the Assembly Amy Dowell and Smil Thoyer from the Alberta College of Dental Hygienists, and Candace Boyce and Diana Mocha from the Dental Hygienists Association of Alberta. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to promote oral health in Alberta, and I invite them to please rise and receive the traditional warm welcome of the Assembly.
The honourable member for Chestmere Strathmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to rise and introduce to you and through an amazing mom, wife, friend, and athlete. I have the pleasure of working with her in my constituency office, Alyssa DeWitt. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of this House.
The honourable member for Drayton Valley, Devon.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm thrilled to introduce to you, through you, and to all the members of this Assembly, my constituency assistants for Drayton Valley, Devon, Isaiah Rye, Clea Rye, Kaylee Forchak. I and the people of Drayton Valley, Devon, blessed to have the hardest working and the best looking team, and welcoming them to this Assembly.
The honourable member for Grand Prairie. The honourable member for Grand Prairie.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to introduce to you and through you and all members of the Legislative Assembly my constituency manager, Janet Norman. Janet makes my life so incredibly easy. She does a fantastic job. I'm very thankful she's on the team. Please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
The honourable member for Calgary Foothills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to introduce you to you and through you and all members of the Assembly, the staffers for Calgary Foothills, Pranav and Olga. Pranav was also our campaign manager. He had previously been working in Ontario, but he loved Alberta so much he stayed behind to run the office in Calgary Foothills. Please rise and accept the warm welcome to the Assembly.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to introduce to you and through you members of Alberta's vibrant Filipino-Canadian community, and from Paradise, Fiji Islands, Jerry Lou, Clarence Molina, Karen Molina, Regina Singh. I now ask them to please rise and receive the traditional warm welcome of the Assembly.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation Economic Corridors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce to you and through you and to all members of this Assembly a group from homeschoolers from Spruce View. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today in the gallery, we have families from the Lehman, Nylander, Lahaney, Logan, Jickling, and Andrews family. I would ask them all to rise and to receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Member for Grand Prairie Wapiti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce to you and through you and to all members of the Legislative Assembly my constituency manager, Debbie McCarthy. Debbie is a remarkable woman who is deeply dedicated to serving the people of Grande Prairie Wapiti. She's also the proud mother of a son who serves in the Canadian Armed Forces. I ask that you please rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Gold Bar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to answer the question I know is on the mind of many MLAs in the House. Who raised this guy? I'd like to further again introduce my mother, Sandra Schmidt. She's here to help you keep a watchful eye on me. She's also celebrating her birthday today. She doesn't want you to know how many or what birthday this is, but just know that she's celebrated many, many, many of them. Please rise and receive the warm welcome.
Ministerial statements. Member statements.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Rutherford has a statement to make.
Mr. Speaker, this Friday, Daniel Smith will hold an emergency caucus meeting to confirm.
Order. The reason for my interruption is yesterday, in member statements, I made the point that if anyone was going to be using the Premier's name in a member statement, that there would be an immediate interruption, which is what I have delivered today. The Honourable Member is welcome to make her statement, but she will refrain from using proper names. The Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My apologies. This Friday, the Premier will hold an emergency caucus meeting to confront the mountain of crisis piling up at her feet. She's already lost 2 members of her own caucus because they could no longer defend the entitlement, the corruption, or the chaos that this Premier has created. She'll now have to face her MLAs while the government faces the largest scandal in Alberta's history, and the evidence is growing, including the former minister, that the firing of the AHS CEO and the board wasn't just unethical, but possibly criminal. She'll also have to explain how her interference in the federal election helped hand Pierre Poilievre a loss, including in his own riding, by putting her brand of extreme, dangerous conservatism front and center, and now she's trying to hold together a fractured caucus while pushing a reckless, a divisive separatism campaign that will only drive Albertans further apart. Let's be clear. There's a radical base in the UCP who would love to see Alberta rip Canada apart like a petulant child throwing a tantrum, willing to burn the country down at a dangerous ideology. However, there are also members within the UCP who still believe that a stronger Canada is with Alberta, who knows unity and that division is not the way forward. Now those MLAs must face constituents who want no longer to be a part of wasteful separatism or this referendum. And First Nations leaders have made it absolutely clear their treaties are with the Crown, not the province, and the talk of separatism must immediately stop. So, on Friday, the Premier will have to decide who she really leads, the separatist fringe or the Albertans who want honesty, stability, and a united future. Albertans are waiting and watching. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Livingston-Macleod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to rise in this House today in recognition of Sexual Violence Awareness Month. Each May, we are reminded not only of the devastating prevalence of sexual violence in our communities, but also of the courage of the survivors and the tireless work of the frontline advocates, counsellors, and support staff across Alberta. Mr. Speaker, sexual violence does not discriminate. It impacts people of all ages, genders, and backgrounds. But too often, survivors suffer in silence, isolated by shame, disbelief, or fear. As leaders, we have a duty to break that silence, to believe survivors, and to create the conditions where healing and justice are possible. Mr. Speaker, our government remains steadfast in its commitment to prevention, intervention, and recovery. Through increased developments of trauma-informed services, initiatives to educate young people about consent, and improvements to the justice system to better support survivors, we are taking meaningful action. Further, our government, through the Ministry of Arts, Culture and Status of Women, will soon be releasing Alberta's 10-year strategy to end gender-based violence. This long-term, cross-ministry plan outlines a path forward for preventing violence, strengthening services, and building safer communities for all Albertans. But we know that the work is far from over. Ending sexual violence requires all of us. It requires each of us to speak up when we see harm and to listen when someone says, "That happened to me." Know our government stands in solidarity with you, and we will continue to work towards building an Alberta where no one is made to feel unsafe, unheard, or unworthy. Let this month be a call of action as our government remains committed to ensuring Alberta is the safest place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the time is now 1:50, and that makes it oral question period. And the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition has question number 1.
Mr. Speaker, this big, beautiful country with all its challenges is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
That's what millions of Albertans demand, and they refuse to let anyone, particularly this government, attack our country. But extremists, some of the same people who blocked Coots, some of the same people who supported this Premier and her leadership, do not believe in Canada, and they want to tear this country down. Instead of leading Alberta, why does this government choose to advance the economically harmful separatist agenda?
The Honourable Premier.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, I've made it very clear that I and my caucus support Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada, and we will defend our constitutional jurisdiction just as we did today in announcing that we are going to challenge the net zero power regs in the court of law as a violation of our Constitution, but also as a safety issue, Mr. Speaker. We just saw what happened in Spain and Portugal when the power went out 3 days ago. That is the kind of thing that we want to avoid here. That is the kind of thing the federal government should not be interfering with. And I would invite the members opposite to actually stand with us in fighting the federal government to get our jurisdiction back.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I invite the Premier of Alberta to say the words, "I support Canada."
Hear, hear.
Not once yesterday when asked, did the Premier stand up for Canada? This should be simple. She spent most of the time yesterday defending American election laws. The UCP government has introduced new laws that will make it easier to hold a separatist referendum, and that process alone will badly damage investment in our province and relationships with First Nation communities. Does the Premier recognize that in her never-ending pursuit for far-right, American-inspired extremist ideology, she is taking down her own province?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support Canada. I would like the Prime Minister to stand up and say that he supports Alberta and is on Team Alberta. And I'd like actually the members opposite to do the same. Why, in every opportunity they have to offer defense, they never stand up for Canada? They are constantly standing up for what was the Liberal NDP coalition and the damaging policies that have crushed our economy, chased away investment. Mr. Speaker, I am proudly, and my caucus are proudly Canadian, but we also want to make sure that the Constitution is honoured and the federal government respects our Constitution.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that was an excellent first start. Let's keep it going. Can the Premier say, "I denounce separatism" next? First Nations have called out this Premier for the government's separatist agenda. They have said flat out that fanning the flames of separatism violates their treaties with the Crown, which are, quote, "sacred covenants that are to last forever," end quote. Even having this discussion is hurting relationships. Engaging separatists hurts the very prosperity that Albertans need, including our First Nations and Indigenous peoples. Why is the government neglecting its treaty obligations by building a path towards a separatist referendum?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just once I'd like to hear the members opposite say, "I support Alberta." They seem incapable of saying that, which may be why they went down to 6.5% in the polls on Monday and why they're voting this weekend to separate completely from the damaged brand of the NDP party at the federal level. They may as well just say, "We are the Carney Liberals," because that would be a lot more honest, and then we would know exactly where they stand. They will never stand with Alberta. They never stand up for our jurisdiction. They never stand up for our industry.
Order. The Honourable Premier is the one with the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side we do, and we will continue to, and that is the reason why we also trust Albertans, Mr. Speaker. We are creating the opportunity for Albertans to put forward issues that matter to them, and I would invite the Speaker, or the members opposite to support it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What's happening here is not the government trusting Albertans and wanting to give them a say. This is fanning the flames of separatism. Even the party president and the UCP VP of Communications are explaining it for the world on Facebook exactly what this legislation is for. The mask is off. Let us be clear, even flirting with a referendum to separate kills investment in the economy and damages relationships with First Nations peoples. It's not going to help. It is going to make us the laughingstock of Canada. Why would the Premier introduce a law that puts us at risk?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why will the members opposite not understand that part of the frustration that Albertans have is that neither them nor their bosses in Ottawa, including the Carney Liberals, have done anything to respect the genuine concerns that Albertans have with the net zero power regs, the tanker ban off the West Coast, Bill C-69 that prevents us from being able to build and approve pipelines, net zero vehicles, the emissions cap. I would just once, Mr. Speaker, like to hear the members opposite say they stand with us in opposing those things.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We've been here for ages. We've seen how this government loves to fight with the federal government over and over, spending zero time getting good deals for Albertans on economic and social issues that they care about. And the talk of this independence referendum is now rocking the business community and shaking investment in our province. The Premier tried to make an announcement today. Every single media question was about separatism. It's derailing her own agenda. Never mind what's happening for businesses in this community. Why is the Premier so focused on separatism? She's derailing her own agenda and killing jobs in Alberta.
The Honourable Premier.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that members opposite know that it takes a long time to develop legislation, and in my very first mandate letter to the Justice Minister, I asked him to review all of the legislation related to elections, which he did, and this bill has come forward after a long amount of time in consultation and writing. Is probably the thickest bill that I've seen, Mr. Speaker. All we are doing is addressing some of the issues around citizen-initiated referenda, recall, election financing. It's a broad menu of reforms. I invite the members to read it, and we will put it to the people. If they have an issue they want to put forward, they now have the ability to do so.
For the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, she wants to put it to the people. Today there was a rally in support of separatism.
No.
3 people showed up. That's who she's listening to. I support and stand for Alberta. I support and stand for Canada. I denounce separatism. Will the Premier denounce separatism right here and right now?
Order. The Honourable. Order. The Honourable Premier.
Couldn't be more clear, Mr. Speaker. I support Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. I support this country working the way it's supposed to. I hear the members opposite constantly calling names to Albertans. They've called them embarrassing cousins and sewer rats. We heard the members opposite call them petulant children. You know what, Mr. Speaker? We on this side support referenda. We support citizens' initiative. In fact, I thought the members opposite did. Wasn't there a referendum on the Olympics in Calgary? Wasn't that the NDP who put that forward? I didn't realize that they were so opposed to these mechanisms. It surprises me.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In every way, this government has the wrong agenda for Alberta. When the former Minister of Infrastructure raised concerns about the corrupt care scandal at the cabinet table, his colleagues called him conspiratorial. $50 million million of Alberta taxpayers are languishing in unusable credit with Atabay halfway around the world. It's not conspiracy, it's fiscal mismanagement and probably corruption. The government has a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers. They referenced it yesterday. The Premier said the AG has it. Will she table that report today so Albertans can really see what happened with the corrupt care that got us Turkish Tylenol?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have not read the reports. I have merely directed the members opposite to look at the statement of defense, which references both reports. And we're asking the question of why it is the AHS CEO withheld those reports when she was directed to give them to us. But I think part of the reason is that it didn't support her theories. In fact, both of the reports said that there was nothing wrong with proceeding.
Order. Order. The Honourable Premier.
Both of them said there was nothing wrong with proceeding with the ASG contracts in order to do a contract extension while we awaited the final approval of the, it said right in the statement of defense, Mr. Speaker. I know they haven't read it. I encourage them to, because both of them are referenced there.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I'm so curious if the Premier didn't read the report so she can maintain plausible deniability later on.
Right.
On January 27th, the AHS board met and agreed to send information over to the RCMP and the Auditor General. 3 days later, the Health Minister fired them. The government pretends the people that they appointed were fired for other reasons, but Albertans aren't stupid. They know a gag order when they see one.
Yeah.
So, if the Premier can't read the reports, there's some great people we could ask about it. Will she remove the gag order off the AHS board members that they fired?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In keeping with your admonition a couple of days ago, I will not say anything that breaches my oath of cabinet confidentiality, but what I will say is part of what this issue is all about is contracting out to charter surgical facilities. And I would like to read, as per our statement of defense, AHS ORs are fully booked. We wouldn't be able to do the ASG cases without bumping other scheduled cases. The procedures would need to be postponed or rescheduled into the future. Mr. Speaker, that is the reason why the contracts needed to be extended. That is the reason why it's been extended again. There are 1,896 surgeries that will take place with that extension, and we're supportive of it, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Dodging responsibility, avoiding the question. We've been seeing it for weeks. We will not let up the pressure on the corrupt care scandal. The Premier knows what a mess she's currently in. One of her very first endorsers has now left cabinet, left caucus because of this corruption, and Albertans deserve answers. When the fake inquiry says nothing to see here, we will not stop asking these questions. Too much of Albertans' money has been wasted and put at risk. Why doesn't the Premier accept that? Call a full public inquiry, as has been asked repeatedly.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The dispute with the former AHS CEO was that she wanted to cancel contracts at private surgical centres. We have extended those contracts because both of the reports that she commissioned said there was no reason not to, said AHS ORs did not have the capacity to do it, and in point of fact, by extending it again, there's 1,896 surgeries that would otherwise be cancelled, including over 1,000 arthroplasties, 208 spine surgeries, and 608 non-arthroplasty repairs. I'd like them to call each of these patients and tell them why they think their surgery should be cancelled, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West Henday.
First Nations are speaking up against Alberta's separatism and against these forthcoming citizens' referendums for separatism that the Premier pranced around in her press conference about Bill 54. Yesterday, I rose in this House to remind this government that they have zero mandate to even entertain the idea of separation without full consultation and negotiation with the First Nations in this province. This country has seen this song and dance before, and First Nations and the late Elijah Harper said no to separation. To the Premier, are you prepared for First Nations to shoot down this government's separatist plans?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Relations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question. I've been on the phone last night and this morning talking with several chiefs around this issue, and I want to just let you know that this government takes treaty rights very seriously, Mr. Speaker. We work on it constantly. We work on the Truth and Reconciliation. We work on the UNDRIP file. We work on all these issues, and we've worked hard to make our Indigenous brothers and sisters partners in prosperity with Alberta, Mr. Speaker. We've developed programs that now are being copied by other provinces, BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, even the federal government is copying our programs because Alberta is the leader when it comes to reconciliation, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Edmonton West Henday.
Mr. Speaker, that's a no. And yesterday I received messages, emails, and notes from support from chiefs and Indigenous leaders, elders, Albertans, and Canadians from other provinces, thanking me for speaking out with the traditional knowledge my elders have taught me about our treaties and this land. This government fails so bad with its treaty relationship. It honestly feels intentional. With talks of separatism by a minority of Albertans being whipped up by this government, it's pretty clear what they're doing. Will the Premier do the right thing and say no to Alberta separating from Confederation? The Chiefs want to know. Yes or no, Premier?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier has made it very clear that we can consistently advocating for a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. I don't know how much clearer we can make it, Mr. Speaker. I mean, the NDP's mothership has crashed, Mr. Speaker. They're looking for another home, a new port, the NLP maybe, the new Liberal Party. So they're looking for issues, Mr. Speaker, and that's all. I've talked with the Chiefs, and we're having meetings with them constantly.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West Henday.
Well, since we're not going to hear it straight from this government and Albertans can read between the wild roads, the UCP's plans, and the Sturgeon Lake and Mikisew Cree First Nations have both issued this government a cease and desist over a S-word. I don't just mean separatism. Will the Premier in fact cease and desist from this treasonous behavior, or does she need to hear from some more lawyers before standing down?
The point of order is noted at 2:06. The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can see the member is grasping at straws because there's no real issues there, Mr. Speaker. And we're working closely with our First Nations. We have meetings planned. We have a big meeting coming up with all of Treaty 6 next week, Mr. Speaker. And the Chief of Mikisew has reached out, and we're setting up a meeting with him, Mr. Speaker. I mean, there are concerns out there, and we take them very seriously, and we listen to our brothers and sisters. They're doing an amazing job out there. We've got so many projects going, Mr. Speaker. That's where they make their living, is off of our energy as well, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we developed many projects. The AIOC, it's the first of its kind, and all across the world. It's done so many amazing things.
The order, the Honourable Member for Edmonton Manning is next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our NDP government banned both corporate and union donations in 2015 because we believe elections should be decided by Albertans. Yesterday, the minister claimed corporations, and I quote, have an interest just like everyone else. But corporations aren't people, and unions aren't people. They don't vote. If a corporate owner or a union member want to donate to a candidate or to a party, they already can. So, can the minister explain why he believes corporations should have special influence in our democracy, more influence than Albertans?
Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member danced around the obvious issue. When the NDP banned corporate and union donations in 2015, they opened the door to dark money through the PACs. Mr. Speaker, corporations, unions were using PACs to put money in without any transparency or accountability. We're putting a stop to that, Mr. Speaker. We're not going to let the NDP get away with PACs and funneling money through their PAC system. We're allowing corporate and union donations, but we're requiring them to be accountable, transparent, and to provide full accounting to the public.
The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that this bill does not get rid of PACs, and given that the minister stood in this House yesterday and I quote, corporations, unions, individuals have interests. They have concerns. But here's the fundamental difference. Corporations don't vote. Albertans do. Corporations don't send their children to public school. Albertans do. Corporations don't wait in emergency rooms. Albertans do. Can the minister explain whose interests this bill is really serving? His friends in corporate boardrooms who's pushing their pro-profit agenda, or everyday Albertans who deserve a democracy that listens to their voices and not their wallets?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member spent a lot of time criticizing corporations, but not once said the same thing about the unions. I wonder why that is, Mr. Speaker. It's obvious that the honourable member has not read the bill yet because it reins in the contributions that are allowed to be made to PACs, Mr. Speaker. We've reined it in from $34,000 down to $5,000 if these amendments are passed. That'll keep the dark money out, Mr. Speaker. That'll allow for financial accountability and transparency, Mr. Speaker. That's what this government believes is the right thing to do.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that yesterday the minister actually claimed they're tackling dark money, yet this bill opens the floodgates to corporate cash. Given that we all know what's happening, the UCP wants their corporate friends to have more influence over our elections. And given that Alberta's interests aren't corporate interests, they're the interests of the people who call this province home. Will the minister admit this bill is really about ensuring their corporate friends can buy influence, or will he finally stand up for Albertans and keep our democracy free from dark money?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the honourable member mentioned the dark money because that's exactly what we're doing, what we're amending to prevent from happening, Mr. Speaker. The NDP in 2015 amended the Act to bring in dark money through the PACs, through the back door, Mr. Speaker, with no financial accountability, no transparency, no public reporting, Mr. Speaker. We're putting an end to that right now. We're banning the PACs from coming in from the back door, Mr. Speaker. We're not going to allow it to happen. We're going to make sure that Albertans know exactly who is receiving money and where it's coming from.
The honourable member for Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Within 20 years, approximately 1.2 million Albertans will be older than 65, creating significant strains on the Alberta's healthcare system, particularly concerning continuing care in rural communities. For this reason, I was happy to learn last year that the government has provided $654 million over 3 years for our continuing care capital program. To the Minister of Seniors, Communities and Social Services, how has this funding been allocated, particularly as it relates to rural communities in northern Alberta?
The Honourable the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, actually, Budget 2025 actually has a total of $769 million in continuing care capital over the next 3 years, in addition to the program mentioned by the Honourable Member. That's going to equate 2,100 more units, Mr. Speaker. That's a sharp contrast from the official opposition, the NDP, when they were in power, which, as we know, made no new houses, Mr. Speaker, for anybody when they're in power. Probably, Mr. Speaker, because they were focused on installing and spending hundreds of millions of dollars on shower heads that didn't work and solar panels that nobody wanted, Mr. Speaker. You see what happens when the government actually works for the people of Alberta.
Order. Order, order. I encourage members to keep comments across the bow to a minimum during the answering and asking of questions. The Honourable Member for Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And through you to the Minister for the answer. Given that long-term care needs in my constituency are already strained with residents facing long wait times just to access facilities, and further given that this is sometimes so bad that regularly hearing from constituents such as seniors and their families in my area, to the same minister, what can my constituents expect in the coming years to address this shortage in my constituency of Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're spending $140 million of that capital dollars directly in rural Alberta in Budget 2025, creating 350 more units, Mr. Speaker. As well, we are spending a significant amount of money investing in capital maintenance and renewal to continue to fix the damage that the Socialist NDP did when they were in power, where they neglected the entire housing system, Mr. Speaker, particularly in rural Alberta, a place where the official opposition does not know it exists, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to do that. This is why we have the largest housing sector anywhere in the country, from continuing care to affordable housing to regular market housing, because we focused on Albertans. We bet on this province, Mr. Speaker, unlike the NDP who continue to want to do what their overlords in Ottawa tell them to do and force things like
The honourable member for Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the Minister. Given that Bonnyville, in particular, is in desperate need for a new long-term care centre with the current outdated facilities being unable to address the area's growing needs and staffing shortages, wait times and limited capacity being the largest concern from residents who wish to age in place with the support and comfort they deserve. Will the same minister please share if they have any recent discussions to invest in further long-term care options in Bonnyville?
The honourable member.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we just completed construction on new seniors lodges with Lakeland Lodge Housing Foundation in the member's constituency. We have several other projects happening with partnership with women's shelters, also inside their constituency. We're going to continue to invest in that area. 10 of 17 of the new continuing care projects in the province are taking place in rural Alberta, Mr. Speaker. A significant amount of that investment will go forward inside communities like the honourable members, and we look forward to continuing to partner with rural Alberta and urban Alberta, because this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we know we need both to make it work, and if any member from the other side would like to come visit rural Alberta, we'd be happy to come and show it to them.
The honourable member for Calgary, Buffalo.
Mr. Speaker, Bill 54 eliminates vouching at polling stations, a critical safeguard ensures marginalized Albertans can exercise their democratic rights. When a similar measure was proposed federally, officials there warned it would disenfranchise over 100,000 people, primarily Indigenous people, seniors, and students. Elections Alberta has only recorded 7 cases of voting irregularities since 2013, and nearly half of Albertans want to keep vouching. Can the minister explain why the UCP are ignoring their own findings and deliberately creating barriers that will prevent some Albertans from voting?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, vouching is a process whereby one elector will vouch for another, recommend that that individual be able to vote. Mr. Speaker, elections are about integrity, they're about transparency, they're about the confidence of Albertans to have the ability to know that their elections are being conducted fairly. The bill and the amendments put forward are about protecting the integrity of our elections, and with that, ensuring that those who are eligible to vote are the only ones that do vote, Mr. Speaker. We're finding an appropriate balance here with these amendments.
The honourable member for Calgary Buffalo.
Thank you. Given that a small group of people on the fringes of Alberta politics have the ear of the Premier and are coming up with solutions to problems that don't exist around vouching, and given that these changes create serious barriers for working Albertans who commute, people who have recently moved, those experiencing homelessness, and seniors who rely on vouching to exercise their democratic rights, will the minister do the right thing and stop this attack on Albertans' democratic rights, or will he continue to allow fringe MAGA-style election conspiracies to determine who gets to participate in Alberta's democracy?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the question to the honourable member. Mr. Speaker, the bill deals with that as well. We're providing a number of different ways for voters to prove their eligibility while preventing voter fraud. That is the balance that we're trying to achieve here, Mr. Speaker. That's the appropriate path that we need to be taking forward to maintain confidence in our election system, to make sure that the integrity of the vote is preserved, Mr. Speaker. We're expanding a number of different things as well. Additional or expanded use of special ballots and giving Elections Alberta officials a wide array of ID that they can rely on for addresses.
The honourable member.
Given that the minister knows exactly what he's doing with this bill, limiting where voters cast ballots and creating barriers for voters, and given that he knows eliminating vouching disenfranchises those without proper ID, and given that he knows banning electronic tabulators and requiring hand counting within 12 hours will just create delays and confusion, how can he stand in this House claiming these changes improve accessibility? Will the minister stop this attack on Albertans' voting rights, or will he at least have the decency to admit that suppressing voter turnout serves this government's
Honourable
interest?
Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I wish the honourable member would have got up with the same vigour when the federal overlords used the same hand counting system in the recent federal election. That's what they do there. That's what we're doing here. And the reason for that is because paper ballots and hand counting is the most reliable way of counting ballots, Mr. Speaker. There's a backstop of paper ballots to verify what happened in an election. If there's a judicial recount, Mr. Speaker, the courts can rely on the paper ballots, real tangible ballots, to rely on, Mr. Speaker. That's confidence in our electoral system. That's what we're going to do. If this bill passes, the integrity of elections will be...
The honourable member for Edmonton City Centre.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 1 year since the UCP passed Bill 20, stripping the right to vote in municipal elections from any Albertan who doesn't have photo ID. According to experts, that will impact up to 50,000 Albertans, roughly the populations of Leduc and Beaumont, primarily seniors, racialized Albertans, and people in rural areas. When I raised that concern with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, he insisted he had a plan that he'd, quote, make it easier than ever to get ID, in fact, instantly. So to the Minister, 1 year later, what specific steps has the government taken to ensure every Albertan has photo ID so they don't lose their right to vote?
The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I certainly hope the NDP will take yes for an answer. Through our Minister of Seniors and Social Services, we have navigation centres where any Albertan can get ID the same day. And Mr. Speaker, our plan is before the municipal election to make an effort to get that message out to all Albertans to make sure every single Albertan, homeless or not, rich or poor, young or old, can get ID. We will make that easy, we'll make it quick, and that is how we will guarantee. So there's the answer. I hope the honourable member can accept it, because it's a strong yes. Yes, we will defend people's right to vote.
The honourable member for Edmonton City Centre.
Given the minister just confirmed he has done nothing since last year, and given that just this week the UCP introduced Bill 54, sweeping legislation full of...
Order. The honourable member for Edmonton City Centre.
Given that just this week the UCP introduced Bill 54, sweeping legislation full of Team Trump tactics, which strip the right to vote in a provincial election if you don't have photo ID. And given that voting's not a privilege, it's a right, one no government should strip from any citizen, but given that this government has done nothing in the past year to mitigate that harm and make it easier for people in rural Alberta to get ID, will the UCP admit that it's actually their goal to imitate the American far right and strip
the Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs?
Mr. Speaker, I understand 10,000 people have gotten their ID through the centres already. I know the folks over there are farming discontent, but the fact is, Mr. Speaker, if they actually care about people that they think won't be able to vote, direct them to the navigation centre. They can get their ID in the same day. So if they actually care about it, they'll do that. But you know what? They don't want to help them. They'd rather have people not vote. We're helping people vote. They're getting in the way. That's the
Order. The honourable member.
Given there are 2 navigation centres, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary for all Alberta, and given that even as Bill 54 strips Albertans' right to vote, it cuts the number of signatures needed to force a referendum in half. Given that means the UCP are simultaneously making it harder for Albertans to vote against them, but easier for Albertans to force a vote on separating from Canada or becoming a 51st state. And given that's about as anti-democratic as it gets, this government is putting their thumb on the scale to get the results it wants. Will the minister just admit what the UCP wants is American-style elections a la Donald Trump, full of chaos, confusion, and voter suppression?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That's 0 for 3. Albertans are proud Canadians who want a strong Canada. When there's a strong Alberta, we have a strong Canada, Mr. Speaker. When there's a strong Canada, we thrive here in Alberta as well. Mr. Speaker, the citizen initiative process is nothing new. The fear-mongering, the misinformation that's being spread by the NDP is certainly new, Mr. Speaker. All Albertans who have an issue that they're passionate about are free to bring it forward, Mr. Speaker, and put the vote to Albertans. That's the point. That's what this government believes in. That's what this Act purports to do, Mr. Speaker. If they don't like democracy, they should move elsewhere.
The Honourable Member for Lesser Slave Lake.
Mr. Speaker, given that industry is strong in my riding of Lesser Slave Lake, you'd think the people in northern Alberta would be benefiting from their hard work. But this Premier's bloated budget has made them feel like she takes their support, trust, and votes for granted. Given how now it's being reported her out-of-control spending is spilled into her own office with a carpet renovation that would make former Premier Redford blush. To the Premier, do you think spending $250,000 to roll yourself out on a red carpet every day is a responsible way of spending taxpayers' money when you run Trudeau-style deficits?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Yeah, happy to take a budget question, Mr. Speaker. Haven't had many since it was passed. I would say budget 25, you know, it's a tough budget in a tough time. Growing province, 4.4% population growth, doing all that we can to build as many schools as quickly and efficiently as possible, you know, still while protecting our industries and encouraging new investments. So I think it's the right budget for right now, Mr. Speaker, a large contingency, a tax cut to address affordability.
The Honourable Member for Lesser Slave Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that highways and healthcare are the responsibility of the province, and given, like a tale as old as time for Northern Alberta, we watch another Premier spend lavishly on wants instead of needs, and given there's now reports that this Premier spent up to $300,000 on China for the government house in Edmonton. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if that figure includes the grey stuff. I heard it's delicious. If you don't believe me, ask the dishes. But to the Premier, don't you think this kind of luxurious spending sends the wrong message to everyday Albertans when we can't get highways and health care?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I agree that this is we are at a moment where Alberta needs to get very serious about the spend, both sides of the House. You know, the member's not wrong. Highways, hospitals, schools, these are all our fundamental principal concerns, and we need to ensure that dollars go further now than ever. And we have to do that in a time of great inflation, of trade uncertainty, of logistical challenges. So that has to be the priority of all of us, and it will continue to be mine.
The order, the Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, given there's an affordability crisis in Northern Alberta, and I quote, duplicitous, entitled, secretive, wasteful, and completely out of touch with the priorities of everyday Albertans, end quote. And given this quote perfectly sums up the bougie lifestyle of private jets, royal carpets, $300,000 on China, and who knows what else. And further given, that quote was made by none other than the Premier herself when she was the leader of the Wild Rose and criticized the lavish spending of then Premier Redford. To the Premier, do you stand by your comments, and will you ever balance a budget again?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, me and members on the front bench and members of the Government Caucus stand with this Premier. I can tell you right now that we understand that there isn't just an affordability crisis in Northern Alberta, there's one across the entire province. But it would seem that the member from Lesser Slave Lake is only concerned about his own personal interests, and that is why he's bringing bully tactics into this chamber, Mr. Speaker. I believe it's unbecoming of a member of this chamber. It's unfortunate, but I'll tell you what, Mr. Speaker, we're concerned about all Alberta. We're concerned about a strong province, a strong country, and that's why we fight every day for it.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Millwoods, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, quote, Alberta's Justice Minister is a longtime friend and related through marriage to a man whose company business dealings with the province's health authority are now part of multiple investigations, end quote. That's exclusive reporting from the Globe and Mail published today. The Minister of Justice is a longtime friend of Sam Raish, the person at the heart of the corrupt care scandal. Did the Minister of Justice recuse himself from all decisions related to the corrupt care scandal when they came before Cabinet? And how is he managing this very serious potential conflict of interest?
The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister of Justice is a member of good standing in this chamber, and I would caution the members opposite to cast aspersions about a member and a minister of the Crown. What I would say is that the Minister of Justice is not involved in any way, shape, or form in this investigation. He is the Minister of Justice and fulfilling his role with the utmost integrity, and that is becoming of his position as the Solicitor General.
Will order the Leader of the Opposition.
Given this personal relationship goes back, quote, a very long time, and I am quoting the minister himself there, given the Minister of Justice often answers all the questions asked of ministers in this assembly about the corrupt care scandal, given this scandal involves kickbacks, political interference, and bloated contracts specifically to someone who is his close personal friend and relative, and given the government has weakened the Conflict of Interest Act, what this minister is in charge of enforcing, how is this government separating themselves from this potential conflict?
The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know what the members opposite are cheering about. There's nothing there. There are 3 independent investigations happening, and I will repeat them as the Minister of Justice has on multiple occasions. 1, the Auditor General is investigating. 2, Judge Wynett is investigating. A former Chief Justice from Manitoba, a man of great integrity and respect among his colleagues. And 3, the RCMP, Mr. Speaker, also investigating. I'm not sure what the members opposite are talking about, but I would caution them with the strongest language to be careful about casting aspersions and calling into question the integrity of the Minister of Justice.
The order, the Honourable Member.
It is a minister's responsibility to operate in an ethical and fair way, and it is the opposition's responsibility to ask these questions, given that this minister is responsible for Crown prosecutors, given this minister is responsible for directing staff to forward all questions through a lawyer before they answer the Auditor General, given this minister has a close personal relationship with Sam Raich at the heart of the corrupt care scandal, and given that the Premier's office would not respond to questions about how they are managing this concerning relationship, will the Premier require her Minister of Justice to recuse himself immediately?
The Honourable Government House Leader. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last time I checked, putting your name on a ballot and getting elected to this wonderful chamber does not preclude you from having friends and relatives, Mr. Speaker. There are also clear lines between the Minister of Justice and his office and the investigations that are happening. The Minister of Justice does not direct. The Minister of Justice is separate, and I think it's despicable the way the members are acting right now when they're calling into question the integrity of the Minister of Justice. RCMP, Auditor General, and Judge Wynett are all investigating this independently, Mr. Speaker. We await the results.
No idea about law.
We await those results. I hope the members would too.
Order, 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 order. Point of order is noted at 2:31. The Honourable Member for Grande Prairie has a question to ask.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2022, Stat Canada reported that cultural industries contributed $2.5 billion to Alberta's economy and sustained over 19,000 jobs in the province. Our government continued support through the Alberta Media Fund has aided nearly 270 productions since 2020, and over 60% of Alberta-made projects are produced in small cities, towns, and rural communities. To the Minister of Culture, how is Budget 2025 continuing to build on our government's successful investments to support Alberta's local film and television industries?
The Honourable the Minister of Arts and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government continues making smart investments to support local Alberta crews, support Alberta filmmakers, and promote Alberta internationally as a go-to destination. Budget 2025 maintains our investment in the Alberta Media Fund, allocating $8 million to continue this growing momentum in this sector. The Alberta Made Screen Industries program supports 3 streams that continue the overall growth of the local film and television industry in Alberta: the Alberta Made Production Grant, the post-production visual effects and digital animation grant and the project script development grant, our government remains focused on ensuring Alberta's success in this industry.
The honourable member for Grand Prairie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government's investment in Alberta's cultural industries diversifies our economy, creates jobs, and shares our unique stories both home and abroad. Given that Alberta's government has played a key role in supporting the music sector with nearly $15 million in annual funding since 2021, and given that, according to StatCan, Alberta's cultural industries, including film, TV, magazines, books, and music, contributes $2.7 billion to our economy and supporting over 19,000 jobs in 2021. Again, to the Minister of Culture, how is the Alberta Media Fund also helping to sustain and grow Alberta music, book, and magazine publishing sectors?
The Honourable Minister of Arts and Culture.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for that question. Our government recognizes that the music and publishing sectors also have significant potential to drive economic growth and showcase Alberta's stories on a broader stage. We proudly support the growth of our music and publishing industries with targeted investments through the Alberta Media Fund. Our work supports Alberta's music sector, including musicians, nonprofits, sound recording agencies, and festivals. We also support, for example, musicians at events like the 2024 and upcoming 2025 Banff World Media Festival to get more local music on screen. We continue working with industry partners to ensure our music and public sectors grow.
The honourable member for Grand Prairie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alberta's film and television industry has seen record growth in recent years, with high-profile productions choosing Alberta as their filming destination. This is not only raising our international profile, but creating real economic opportunities here in Alberta. Given that the film and television tax credit has generated more than $1.5 billion in investment and over 14,000 jobs, can the Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade explain how Alberta's film and television sector is contributing to our economic growth and diversification?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Film and television production in Alberta is more than entertainment. It's a major driver of jobs, investment, and economic momentum. Since launching the film and television tax credit, we've supported over 200 productions, generating over 14,000 jobs and $1.5 billion in Alberta-based spending. And we've budgeted $235 million to support the film and television tax credit over the next 3 years. We're investing in the entire value chain of the sector, from attracting international productions to developing homegrown talent to building local capacity in post-production visual effects and more. Through strategic investments, Alberta's government is making our province one of the best places in North America to film, television, and movies.
The honourable member for Edmonton Decore has a question to ask.
Alberta families are being crushed at the checkout line. Grocery prices are up over 20% since the UCP government came to power. Food bank use is breaking records, even among the working Albertans. Yet this government has no plan, this government has no relief, and this government has no answers, but we will keep asking. When will the minister deliver real, immediate solutions that will make life more affordable for Alberta families?
The Honourable Minister of Affordability and Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for that question. The good news is we're doing it this year, thanks to the Minister of Finance bringing in the tax cut to help every single Albertan, every single family, making life more affordable. Because you know what we believe on this side of the House? Leaving money in Albertans' wallets, because they know what to do with it best, not taking it from them and redistributing it elsewhere. We're working hard in every sector, in every ministry, to leave money in the wallets of Albertans. We're here to put them first.
The honourable member for Edmonton Decore.
Unbelievable. Given that just 2 weeks ago, when I asked about the government's plan on affordability, the minister's response was, and I quote, "We can't pay their bills." Given that Albertans are not asking handouts or paying their bills, but for a real leadership. Given that this government's affordability plan, let's talk about the tax cut that saves for average Albertans less than $1, actually 78 cents. Will the minister admit that this plan is not working for Albertans?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's ironic that the NDP keep bringing this up. When we do tax cuts, they did tax raises. They brought in the carbon tax in Alberta, raising the average monthly bill for Albertans by hundreds of dollars for 4 years. We can go down the list. They spend money. They take it from Albertans and they spend it on projects. We never get it back. They lost $2 billion transitioning from coal. We're here to serve Albertans. We're here to bring a care-first model of insurance. We're here to start more housing. We're here to bring more schools for Albertans, and we brought forward a tax cut. That's what we're doing for Albertans.
The honourable member.
Given this affordability crisis did not happen overnight, it is the result of an ongoing government policy choices. Given that the wages have fallen, costs have exploded, and this government has done nothing to address the real problem. Will the minister admit that their no plan is costing Albertans at the checkout and table a real affordability plan?
The honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, we do have a plan, and thankfully Albertans helped institute it. Get rid of the NDP. They cost Albertans money. We're here to bring back affordability. We're working through our entire electricity system. We've lowered the cost of electricity down 53% year over year. We've worked on retail costs. We've worked on local access fees. We've worked on transmission, which is in the bill before the House right now. You know what? In the last 12 years, there was $12 billion in transmission. Half of that was spent under the NDP while they were in power, nearly $6 billion of transmission. We're working on lowering those costs, making life more...
The honourable member for Edmonton, Highlands, Norwood.
It's May Day, International Workers' Day, and workers all over Alberta are struggling with rising costs. I was so proud to support Bill 210, Protecting Workers' Tips, a common-sense bill that would require employers to pass on all tips to workers without deduction. 7 other provinces have similar legislation, including conservative-run Saskatchewan. But the UCP, they killed this bill immediately, ignoring the pleas of workers. Shameful. Instead of standing up for Albertans who can't make ends meet, the UCP is focused on dividing us and pandering to separatists. When will this Premier start focusing on workers and support everyday Albertans?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade.
Mr. Speaker, we certainly understand the intent behind Bill 10. The problem is that there was not, the work was not done to draft a strong piece of legislation. It's not clear in the legislation how tips will be accounted for or distributed to employees, including with respect to electronic payments. And there's no guidance in Bill 210 for how tips should be handled when a pooling agreement is not in place. The bill also tasks employees with driving the establishment of the pool system, excluding owners, even minority owners who may own a fraction of the business but perform the same roles as a server or a busser. Mr. Speaker, let's get it right, and we'll continue to watch what's happening in other jurisdictions.
The honourable member for Edmonton Islands, Norwood.
Given that every day we hear from more and more Albertans who are struggling with the cost of food, rent, utilities, the list goes on, and given that the University of Alberta Campus Food Bank has reported an alarming 600% increase in usage, pointing to high costs of living as the key reason for skyrocketing student food bank usage, including out-of-control rents. We, on our side of the House, have offered solutions to help these struggling Albertans, like increasing affordable housing, like Bill 210 and capping surging rents. But instead of doing anything to help, the UCP are focused on separation and division. Right. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, finally a question about housing. I noticed that the NDP have been avoiding it. That's probably because Alberta's built more houses than any other province, Mr. Speaker. Almost 50,000 the last year, Mr. Speaker. An increase of almost 33%. Rent is down in Calgary by about 7.8%. Rent is stabilizing in the city of Edmonton, Mr. Speaker. And what happened when the NDP were in power, that great socialist party, Mr. Speaker? What? 0 houses during their time, Mr. Speaker. That's why the NDP don't want to talk about it, because they don't like Albertans. That's why they bet against them. We bet on them every time, and that's why we keep winning.
The honourable member for Edmonton Islands, Norwood.
Given that this is a UCP government that continues to put profits before people at every opportunity, and given that many Albertans are struggling every single day to make ends meet, but instead of prioritizing any type of affordability measures, the UCP are bringing dark money into politics, allowing corporations to donate and line conservative pockets. And given that my constituents are asking for real, tangible support from this government, not Trump-style election law changes that help no one but the UCP's friends, will anyone on that side of the House stand up for their constituents and put aside the far-right rhetoric and instead prioritize the people they're supposedly here to represent?
That's right. must admit I have some difficulty making the connection from the first question to the third question, but the Honourable Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade.
I want to take it home.
Mr. Speaker, Alberta continues to have the highest wages in the country, the lowest taxes, the best jobs, best place to live. Mr. Speaker, that's why, unlike under the NDP, when people decided to leave Alberta to find work, to leave Alberta to support their families, we're seeing record numbers of young people relocating from all across Canada to Alberta. Young people see opportunity here. Albertans know that that opportunity will disappear if that party is ever in government again, but thankfully, Mr. Speaker, they won't be.
Honourable members, that concludes the time allotted for oral question period. In 30 seconds or less, we'll continue with the remainder of the daily routine. Order. The honourable member for Calgary Northeast has a statement to make.
Mr. Speaker, while the Premier is busy talking about separating Alberta from Canada, pushing an Alberta pension plan, creating a provincial police force, rewriting election laws to make separatist referendums easier, and big money politics louder, people in Calgary Northeast are asking for basics. We don't have enough schools. Our hospitals are overwhelmed. Inflation is crushing families. And crime is making people feel unsafe in their own neighborhoods. And yet, instead of addressing these urgent issues, the Premier is playing with democracy like it's a board game, changing the rules to divide, distract, and destabilize. But let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. The people of Calgary Northeast are proud Albertans and proud Canadians. Yes, we live just minutes from the airport, but we don't want to take a plane from Calgary to Canada. We want Calgary to stay in Canada. We are a community of immigrants who came here to build, not to break. We work hard, raise families, and live with values of fairness, democracy, and unity. So I invite the Premier to come to Calgary Northeast, not for a photo op, but to listen. Come meet the parents, the seniors, the workers, and see how out of touch their priorities really are. We don't need separation. We need solutions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cypress Medicine Hat has a statement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's be real. Ottawa doesn't care about Alberta. Their anti-energy policies and equalization payments serve to bleed our province dry. The gap between Western Canada and the federal government feels wider than the Rockies. So let's talk about it. Why is Alberta being hung out to dry by its own federal government? Well, maybe it's because when Alberta tries to have a seat at the table, Ottawa only wants to hear "yes, me lord" right away and have its servant do its bidding. But Alberta is no servant. We say pipeline, they hear problems. We say prosperity, they say pollution. We say freedom, they say autocratic dystopia. But don't take my words for it, Mr. Speaker. Take the federal government's own Policy Horizons report. I, for one, do not want my children's future to be one of foraging off the lands to survive, as this report states. Mr. Speaker, Albertans refuse to sit around and wait for the rest of the country to treat us like equals, while those hell-bent on creating a dystopian future only want no one to prosper. We have put in the work, we've built the industries, and we financially support the rest of the country's welfare state while paying far more into the system than what we take. And what do we get in return? Policies meant to sabotage our economy, morally bankrupt federal leaders determined on scuttling our industries, and headlines that alienate the western half of this country. Albertans are proud of their land, proud of their work, and proud of their communities. But pride only goes so far, Mr. Speaker. It's starting to feel more like the feds are systematically harvesting us for our organs while we're alive on the table. We've put our backs into building and supporting a country that acts like it doesn't know Alberta when it's time to listen, but sure remembers us with open hands when it's time to pay the bills of an overspending federal and provincial governments across the country. Maybe the feds should take a page from our book and build prosperity and hope. If they don't, well, history is littered with examples of people groups being pushed too far. It's time to get real about this 2040 report and ensure it doesn't come to pass.
The honourable member for Calgary-Edgemont has a statement to make.
Mr. Speaker, I have received many letters from all over Alberta telling me that women's shelters are in crisis. I would like to share one in the House. Rates of domestic violence are rising, and the severity is increasing. In 57% of cases, frequency and severity of violence has increased according to the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. The need for women's shelter services has risen by 50% since 2021. There isn't enough spaces. One shelter alone had to turn away 78.3% of people seeking a safe space because of the shortage of spaces. At the same time, funding for women's shelters is flat. Wages have not kept pace with inflation, and the number of staff has decreased. Inflation is up by 30% since the government last increased funding. Domestic violence shelters' wages are on average 21% lower compared to jobs in other sectors. The status quo is not sustainable. Women's shelter staff are doing more with less, having to turn away those experiencing violence because there is no safe space available is a major contributor to staff burnout. Low wages and burnout has created a crisis in recruitment and retention. This is not a big city problem. Almost half the calls for help are in rural areas and small towns. Those experiencing violence are waiting for months for shelter space. In 2022-23, shelters were unable to accommodate 11,000 children. On the front lines, we're now seeing children in encampments. This is a direct result of your budget's decisions. Now is the time to change those decisions. Provide women's shelters the same 14% ongoing funding to address infrastructure needs you and your colleagues have through increased living allowances. Provide the same annual increases to frontline wages that MLAs and ministers receive. Double the number of staff you've done in the Legislative Assembly office staffing. Albertans watched the budget drop and hoped the UCP government would do the right thing. But the only thing we have seen so far is chaos, cuts, corruption, and cruelty.
The honourable member for Edmonton-McClung.
Monsieur le Président, si j'ai bien compris, vous êtes en train de me dire à la prochaine fois. Mr. Speaker, Parti québécois Premier René Lévesque spoke those words on October 20th, 1980, after 60% of the Quebec electorate rejected his government's sovereignty referendum motion. It was a resounding defeat for the separatist movement in Quebec, but it was not the end of their determination to secede from the Canadian Federation. I was in Quebec in May of 1980 in a month-long French immersion program in Jonquière, a separatist stronghold. Later that fall, I attended McGill University in Montreal. It was a fascinating but very serious time to be a poli-sci student in Quebec. Now, when I returned to Alberta, I learned that my battles against separatism were not over. Western separatism was raising its head. Separatist parties of various stripes were forming to give voice to the minority of discontented voters they hoped to represent. They eventually fizzled out. Now, Alberta's UCP government is leading the separatist bandwagon. The Sovereignty Within the United Canada Act, the plan to get rid of the CPP, steps to impose an Alberta provincial police force, recent proposed legislation to grease the wheels towards a sovereignty referendum vote, all demonstrate this government's wish to pave the way for Alberta to leave Confederation. If it walks like a separatist and quacks like a separatist, it's a separatist. Alberta's New Democrats and the vast majority of Albertans will give separatists the same clear answer Quebecers gave to Lévesque in 1980. Jamais, jamais, jamais. Never, never, never.
Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Presenting petitions, notices of motions, introduction of bills.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honoured to rise and request leave to introduce Bill 55, the Health Statutes Amendment Act 2025. This bill includes amendments regarding health foundation governance, hospital oversight, public health's role in the refocus system, and further protection for seniors and vulnerable adults. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move first reading of the Health Statutes Amendment Act 2025.
The Honourable the Minister of Health has moved first reading of Bill 55, Health Statutes Amendment Act 2025. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered.
Bill 55, Health Statutes Amendment Act 2025 is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Are there tablings? The Honourable Member for Cypress Medicine Hat.
Speaker, I rise to table 3 separate documents and the 5 requisite copies. One is the actual Canadian government's Policy Horizon 2024 report titled Future Lives, Social Mobility in Question, showcasing education and hard work will no longer help with upward mobility, and people will be needing to forage, hunt, and fish out of necessity. The second is a Rick Bell article, the horror show Mark Carney and the Liberals want to deep six, which also references the Policy Horizons report. And the third one is a Michael Higgins report titled, We Are Heading for a Nightmare, Even the Government Thinks So, highlighting there is more snakes than ladders in the Canadian game of life with this report.
Member for Edmonton, Glenora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have a tabling letter from constituents of mine who have a pipe fitter son who's been diagnosed with carpal tunnel, unable to prove that it's directly related to his work. He's been unemployed and waiting for surgery, and now is being advised to pay privately.
Chief Government Whip.
Mr. Speaker, I have a few tablings here. One on the National Post talking about Dr. David Suzuki a while back when he had to retract comments supporting that eco-terrorist group called Extinction Rebellion. Also, there's another one here talking about the peaceful protests in the Coastal GasLink, of which one of the members here needs a little reversionist history of what really happened, which was a ton of people showed up with axes and burnt vehicles with people in them that managed to get out, smashed a ton of equipment, again under peaceful protest. And then a contrast was another article from Tim Blackwell showing what happened down in Ottawa with the convoy, where the convoy folks actually had bouncy castles. And there's also a member statement, Mr. Speaker, that was done in this House on the 24th of November 2021 that ties it all together.
For a need to retable Hansard. Are there others? Oh, the Honourable Member for Edmonton West Henday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 letters here. One is a cover letter from Sturgeon Lake and Mikisew Cree First Nation to the Prime Minister asking to get Alberta in line with respect to separatism, and an enclosed second letter from that cover letter, which is a cease and desist letter, which outlines inter alia that the province shut down the national unity crisis and enabling referendums on separatism.
Others? The Honourable Member for Airdrie Cochrane has a tabling.
I just thought I'd let you know, Mr. Speaker, I don't have a tabling today.
Others? Seeing none, the clerk.
Tablings to the clerk, deferred divisions.
Members, that brings us to points of order, of which there was 2 points of order. The first point of order was called at 2:07 while the Honourable Member for Edmonton West Henday was speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In advance, I will say that we will be withdrawing the second point of order. So I rise on 23H, I, and J. At the time noted of 2:06, the member from Edmonton West Henday was speaking, asking questions to the government. And at the time, the member said, will the Premier in fact cease and desist from this treasonous behavior, or will she just need to hear from some more lawyers? Mr. Speaker, there's also another point of order here. I mean, and I quote as much as one can quote unofficial records, UCP plans and the Sturgeon Lake and Mikisew Cree First Nations have both issued this government a cease and desist over an S word, and I don't mean separatism. I would love to know what the member meant from Edmonton West Henday when he said the S word. Mr. Speaker, both these, I think, are points of order, particularly one suggesting that the Premier has a treasonous agenda. And I will go back. Will the Premier in fact cease and desist from this treasonous behavior? That is implying that the Premier herself has a treasonous agenda, is engaging in treasonous behavior. This is incredibly egregious. It is a lofty claim to suggest that someone, particularly a head of the government, is engaging in treasonous and has a treasonous agenda. Treason would be an example as defined as to use force or violence for the purpose of overthrowing the government of Canada or a province. Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to defending a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. We believe in the strength of our country, but we also believe that our country is not strong without a strong Alberta, and we want both, Mr. Speaker. And to suggest the Premier is a treasonous individual is out of line.
Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I disagree with the Government House Leader. This is not a point of order. This is absolutely a matter of debate. Because we have not made a personal accusation or insult to an individual, instead we are talking about the Premier in her role as Premier, and I have made this reference before, Mr. Speaker, November 5th, 2024, you said, quote, I think the Premier's record is a matter of debate on which members will have a variety of opinions, end quote. In this case, we are talking about the actions of someone who is acting on behalf of the province of Alberta. It includes things like introducing legislation, which has caused a great deal of concern. The member opposite used a definition of treason. I will also say it can include actively working against it or its government. This provincial government has made an entire career out of opposing the federal government. They fundraise off it. They love it. In this case, we are talking about behavior. We are not intending to insult the Premier as an individual. We are talking about what is happening in this place. I believe it is a matter of debate, and we will listen to your ruling, Mr. Speaker, and adjust accordingly.
I do have the benefit of the blues, and while I accept perhaps I didn't have enough for lunch today, I'm mildly hangry, and I am unaware of the context in which I said the Premier's record is a matter of debate. I stand by that statement. What I can almost assuredly guarantee is that on that particular day, no one was accusing the Premier of treason. The Premier's record is one thing. Accusing another member of committing a crime is entirely different. Because in this House, there's long-standing traditions that we don't get to accuse other members of breaking the law, particularly in light of treason. There's all sorts of references that I can point to with respect to a debate around treasonous activities, and there's a long list of accusations listed in both shames. I'm happy to pull it out for you, show you all the places that it's unparliamentary. But the fact of the matter is, we don't enjoy the benefit of accusing another member of committing treason. It's unparliamentary. It's not a matter of debate, and the member can apologize and withdraw.
On behalf of the member, I apologize and withdraw.
I consider the matter dealt with and concluded. Orders of the day, orders du jour.
Committee of the Whole.
I'd like to call the committee to order. The Committee of the Whole has under consideration Bill number 46, Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act 2025. Are there any comments, questions, or amendments to be offered with respect to this bill? I will recognize the member from Edmonton Southwest.
Mr. Chair, I would like to introduce an amendment to Bill 46. Would you like to see the amendment? after which I would like to, with your permission, Mr. Chair, read it into the record.
This will be Amendment A1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to read it into the record, I would like to move that Bill 46, Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act 2025 be amended by striking out Section 2(9). And Mr. Chair, I would like a few moments, if I may, to provide my rationale. Thank you for the opportunity to address a truly significant issue, and I want to raise to the attention to this House, I want to raise for the attention of all members of this House that there is a profoundly dangerous and undemocratic element hidden in Bill 46, the Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act 2025. I am referring specifically to what will ultimately be Section 97.1 of the Access to Information Act and Section 62.1 of the Protection of Privacy Act, respectively, or Section 2(9) and Section 1(3) of Bill 46. These particular sections essentially and effectively function as what are known as Henry VIII clauses, provisions that allow the Executive Council, the Premier, and Cabinet to unilaterally amend or appeal legislation without ever having to return to this chamber for approval or for scrutiny. Let's be clear. These clauses amount to an executive power grab. They fundamentally undermine the role of this legislature and the responsibilities of all members of this assembly, and they are an affront to the democratic values that Albertans hold dear. And these provisions are not just a legal technicality, they are a deliberate and calculated effort by this UCP government to consolidate power and eliminate legislative oversight. They threaten the transparency and accountability and due process that are supposed to underpin Alberta's democracy. Let me take a moment to walk through what's actually in these provisions. So what would be Section 97.1 of the Access to Information Act and Section 62.1 of the Protection of Privacy Act, or respectively Section 2(9) and Section 1(3) of Bill 46, would grant the Lieutenant Governor and Council, effectively the Cabinet, the authority to make any regulations that the Cabinet considers necessary as a result of this Act. That includes the ability to override, modify, or repeal other pieces of legislation through regulation, bypassing this Assembly entirely. These clauses allow the government to unilaterally amend virtually any act or regulation or any provision within this act. And they would be able to do so by using language so vague, quote, any necessary changes as a result of this act, that it creates virtually limitless discretion. And Mr. Chair, the government would be able to do it all without debate, without transparency, without a single vote, and without a shred of input from the public or elected members of this Assembly. And Mr. Chair, I think we would all agree in this House that this is not how democracy is supposed to work. Albertans expect and deserve laws that are created and amended through proper legislative procedure, not through opaque and unaccountable executive decisions made behind closed doors. We are all in this chamber elected to scrutinize legislation, to debate its merits, to amend it where necessary, and to ensure that it serves the public interest. But what the UCP is doing here is to attempt to remove us from that process altogether. and that is nothing short of a betrayal of their democratic responsibilities. Let me remind this House that this is not the first time the UCP government has attempted to give itself the power to rewrite laws without legislative debate. We saw it with the Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, which initially gave the Premier and Cabinet the power to unilaterally amend legislation. That clause was only changed after intense public backlash and widespread legal criticism, but the intention was clear: bypass the legislature. We saw it again with Bill 18, the Provincial Priorities Act, which allows Cabinet to veto agreements between post-secondary institutions and the federal government without debate or consultation. Again, this government demonstrated a disturbing willingness to centralize authority and block transparency. And we must not forget the Public Health Emergencies Powers Amendment Act introduced under Premier Jason Kenney. That bill also attempted to give Cabinet the authority to unilaterally rewrite laws during a public health emergency. Ironically, many of the MLAs on the government side today opposed that very proposal at the time, citing the importance of legislative oversight. So my question to them is, what has changed? The public pushed back. At the time, legal experts sounded alarms, and the Premier himself eventually backed down. Yet here we are again, this time with privacy laws, laws that are fundamental to the protection of Albertans' personal information and rights. And instead of creating strong, modern privacy protections, Bill 46 creates a regulatory black hole. The UCP claims this bill is about modernization, but these clauses reveal the true agenda: to create a backdoor for Cabinet to make sweeping legal changes without ever facing public scrutiny. This bill has implications not only for today, but for decades to come. Once such extraordinary powers are granted to Cabinet, they rarely get taken away, Mr. Chair. Future governments of any stripe could use these clauses to bypass this Assembly on critical decisions. This is not about trusting the current Premier or Cabinet. This is about defending the long-standing democratic institutions that Albertans rely on. And that's why today I'm proud to stand to introduce amendments to strike Section 2.9 from Bill 46 completely. And let me be crystal clear. These amendments are not just merely technical adjustments. They are essential to protecting the democratic fabric of our province. The amendment that I introduced would ensure that any changes to privacy laws must come back to this legislature, where they can be debated, amended, and voted on by the elected representatives of the people of Alberta. And Mr. Chair, I think we would all agree that democracy cannot function without scrutiny, it cannot function without accountability, and it cannot function when governments have the ability to rewrite laws in secret. Mr. Chair, these Henry VIII clauses are part of a pattern of eroding checks and balances, a pattern of the Premier and her Cabinet concentrating more and more power in their own hands, a pattern of treating the legislature and, by extension, the people of Alberta as an inconvenience. Of course, it would just be easier if they could amend the legislation, but that's not how democracy works, Mr. Chair. The Premier has said she values democratic input, but actions speak louder than words. Whether it's Bill 46, the Sovereignty Act, or Bill 18, the actions of this government tell a different story, a story of a government that wants power without oversight, authority without accountability, and this must stop. We have already seen public concern around data privacy intensify in this digital age with the rise of artificial intelligence, biometric data collection, surveillance technologies, and large-scale data breaches. Albertans are rightly asking for more protection, not less, and allowing Cabinet to unilaterally amend privacy legislation behind closed doors creates a dangerous environment where the rights of citizens can be altered without notice, without consultation, and without debate. This might seem, and I think this government parades this piece of legislation as something routine, something that is just quite rudimentary or quite routine and quite simple. But it in fact has broad and wide sweeping implications for decades to come. Consider how other jurisdictions are responding to the data revolution. In Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation has set a global standard for how governments must handle personal data, with strict accountability, transparency requirements, and enforcement. It's not perfect, but it demonstrates what leadership looks like. And instead of moving in that direction, Alberta is being dragged backward into a time when power is concentrated in the hands of a few. Bill 46, with its Henry VIII clauses, is not only regressive, Mr. Chair, it is reckless. And we must also consider how these clauses interact with other ongoing concerns in Alberta's legislative environment. Since the Premier took office, Albertans have repeatedly raised concerns about the erosion of democratic norms, whether it's through the lack of consultation with Indigenous communities, rapid reshuffling of oversight roles, or hostile centralization of authority. This government has shown an alarming pattern, Mr. Chair, and these concerns are not abstract. They affect everyday Albertans, parents who want their children's data protected in schools, patients who worried about how their medical records are stored, workers whose employment history and financial data can potentially be compromised. Privacy is not just a bureaucratic function, it is a pillar of our freedom, and once it is eroded, it is extremely difficult to rebuild. But let me take us back to this specific amendment again. As I said, Mr. Chair, this amendment is not simply about this specific piece of legislation. It has long-lasting implications. If this legislature does not act now to defend its role, it may soon find itself powerless to prevent even greater abuses of authority. The time to draw the line is here and now, because at the heart of this specific piece of legislation is essentially taking away powers from the legislature. It's taking away legislative oversight. If we allow this bill to pass with the clauses as proposed, we are setting a precedent, one that says it's acceptable for Cabinet to write and rewrite laws on a whim, that it's acceptable to cut elected representatives out of the process, that democracy can be optional, that it is inconvenient. And so let me say to every member of this chamber, whether you sit on the government side or the opposition benches, this affects all of us. Because today it may be a UCP government using these powers, but tomorrow it could be any government. And once this precedent is set, it will be difficult to undo. And so I encourage all members of this House to do the right thing, to vote in favor of this amendment. Albertans deserve to have a say in the laws that govern their lives, and we, as their elected representatives, have a responsibility to protect their voice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
you. Are there any others wishing to comment? Amendment A1 is on the table. The member for Edmonton McClung has risen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of disappointed that we don't have members opposite willing to engage in debate. I thought for sure that that would be a piece of legislation or an amendment that would bring somebody to their feet across the aisle. However, it seems as though they're just interested in making sure that our democratic rights are protected in this province, because somebody on the other side, Mr. Chair, should have caught what the member for Edmonton Southwest was trying to highlight in his remarks, and something I want to focus on as well during my remarks, caught the fact that the quiet piece of this legislation, or what the government perhaps wants to keep quiet, is pretty concerning. And the member for Edmonton Southwest spoke about 29 section 2 bracket 9 as it is the subject of his amendment, and how indeed it should be removed from the bill itself. We expect this type of legislation, this brand of democratic suppression to take place in other states. We expect to see it coming from the United States, because it typically is what's happened during the 2 Trump administrations, and this one is even worse. And I mean, if indeed there's a template that the government is following, it seems to be something from the United States under the Trump administration that they've glommed onto, because this is in fact the type of measure that any autocratic style government would want to implement if indeed they were looking to sustain themselves without having to be bothered going back to the legislature. And as was mentioned, Bill 18 was an earlier rendition of this similar brand of legislation that the government brought forward and ended up having to back down on during the COVID-19 period. And yet again, what we see is this government making another run at suppressing our democratic rights as Albertans to have legislation and major changes run through this legislature, Mr. Chair. This is what we have a legislature for. But to circumvent that process, to give Cabinet the right to make changes to laws that they don't have to run through the legislature, and they can bypass the legislature, is a serious breach of our democratic rights as Albertans and as legislators here in the province, Mr. Chair. It seems as though the government thinks that Albertans are asleep at the switch. But anybody who's reading the political tea leaves in this province right now, Mr. Chair, will know that Albertans are very much alive to politics, to democratic rights, and to any threat to the democracy that is out there. So now, not on top of the threat to our democracy that we have felt over the past number of months due to the Trump administration's threat to our very existence as a country, as a nation, hoping to take us over as a 51st state. Albertans are very much alive, along with the rest of Canadians, as to any threat to our democracy and the institutions that are fundamental to it. That, of course, major one being our legislature. And embedded in this bill is a measure which the amendment brought forward by member for Edmonton Southwest purports to correct, is a section which permits the government and council, the cabinet, to make laws unto himself, free of the encumbrance of the inconvenience of having to go to the legislature. And Mr. Chair, that's what this government seems to feel the legislature is. It's an inconvenient place. It's an autocratic attitude towards legislative scrutiny. I am pretty sad and disappointed that we're at this place in Alberta politics now, and it'd be interesting to see what the response from the government is given their hard-nosed approach to allowing Cabinet to make decisions while bypassing the legislative authority, the legislative branch of our democratic institutions, is pretty strong evidence that they are not going to consider this amendment or support it. And that will be a travesty if indeed that is what they do. But I would recommend that all members of the government, question themselves as to why indeed their government in council, their governor in council, where the cabinet, the government that they are part of their caucus, the UCP caucus that they purportedly support, why indeed they, in their heart of hearts, can go back to their constituents and say, look, we've supported a measure as backbenchers and not members of cabinet, we've supported a measure that takes away the legislature's right to scrutinize legislation. We've given power to the cabinet to make decisions that would otherwise have to go back to the legislature for scrutiny and debate. And I mean, it in one demonstration of fact shows that this legislature matters, but it only matters, Mr. Chair, in terms of being an encumbrance to this government. And I'm really sorry to report that this is a pattern that one can continue to expect this government to demonstrate, one of trying to silence opposition and avoid scrutiny, do things on the quiet, not be having the light of day or the sunlight shine on decisions of government, and disrespect our legislative institutions, the legislature itself, and therefore democratic rights of every Albertan in this province. And I, for one, am very certain that we'll see that the legislature receives the attention it deserves from Albertans at a moment right now when it's under threat of being diluted and undermined by pieces of legislation like Bill 46 and the components in it which have been described as Henry VIII clauses, ones which give absolute authority to a body to completely disregard the legislative branch. So in my estimation, Mr. Chair, it would be something that would be enlightening to hear from the members opposite about if indeed they feel this is a piece of legislation that champions democracy. I'd like to hear that argument, hear that rationale, Mr. Chair, because it certainly escapes me as to how, when you take away the right of the legislature to have the ability to scrutinize a proposal to change the laws in this province, and the cabinet is granting unto itself the right to make changes to laws without having to go through the legislature, how that indeed is something that the members opposite can describe to me and to Albertans as a positive supporting measure for our legislative and democratic process. I have yet to hear any rationale that convinces me, or that I think would convince Albertans, that this is a necessary move on the part of the government to protect your democracy. It does the opposite. It diminishes our democracy, diminishes us as participants in a free society, when indeed cabinet takes unto itself the rights to making laws without scrutiny of the legislature. I mean, our parliamentary system depends upon this legislature being supreme, not the cabinet, this legislature. And increasingly, whether it was Bill 18 or now Bill 46, this legislature is being seen as an inconvenient truth to the government of the day, to the UCP government. And at a time when our institutions are under threat from afar, and parliamentary democracies around the world are being challenged by autocratic dictatorships, and everybody who's a member of a society that has been enjoying the freedom to choose their own governments and to be governed under a parliamentary system where the institutions are recognized, we're feeling threatened, feeling concerned, feeling frightened globally right now, Mr. Chair. And this piece of legislation contributes to that fear. And it's exactly the opposite thing that the government should be doing, that this Alberta government should be doing in terms of reassuring Albertans about the strength of their democracy and the value that they see in the institutions that uphold that democracy. Once we start chiseling away at our democratic rights, as we see happening in Bill 46, once the legislature is disregarded as the supreme authority to pass laws, once Cabinet is regularly seen to have the ability to make changes to laws without the inconvenience of having to go through the legislature, every chiseled point becomes a weakening of the structure of our democracy. And I really wanted to highlight that this afternoon, Mr. Chair. I know it's focusing on one component of the bill, but the amendment before us that we're talking about to Bill 46 is a very, very important amendment to get rid of a very dangerous piece of this legislation. There's a number of other elements that I'm not particularly fond of, but I wanted to bring to the attention of all members the lack of forethought, or perhaps the intent of the government to actually weaken our democracy for their own benefit. I mean, one can speak to motivation, Mr. Chair, and wonder why, but the only plausible explanation is this government wants to garner power unto itself and avoid any scrutiny, and has no regard whatsoever for the value of our democracy. So with that, I'll look forward to moving on and at some point in the future engage in further debate on this legislation, and I urge all members to support the amendment made by the member for Edmonton Southwest.
Any others wishing to make comment on Amendment A1? Seeing none, I will call the question on Amendment A1 as proposed by the member from Edmonton Southwest. Are you agreed? Any opposed? No. That is defeated. We move back on to the main bill. Is there any member wanting? Oh, division has been called. Call in the members. Honourable members, a division has been called on Amendment A1 as proposed by the member for Edmonton Northwest. All those in favour of the amendment, please rise. Oh, Southwest, yes, sorry.
Member Arkan Paul, Honourable Member Hoffman, Mr. Ip, Member Kellahu Stonehouse, Mr. Shepherd, Ms. Wright, Mr. Kozowski, Member Irwin, Ms. Renault, Honourable Mr. Schmidt, Honourable Ms. Sigurdsson, Mr. Dack.
All those opposed, please rise.
Honourable Mr. Sigurdsson, Honourable Mr. Nicolaides, Honourable Ms. Schultz, Honourable Mr. Williams, Honourable Minister Lagrange, Honourable Mr. Horner, Honourable Mr. Scow, Honourable Mr. Ellis, Honourable Mr. Amory, Honourable Mr. Newdorf, Honourable Mr. Lowen, Honourable Mr. Wilson, Honourable Mr. Jean, Honourable Mr. Dreeshen, Honourable Mr. Nixon, Mr. Wright, Mr. Rosewell, Honourable Mr. Turton, Honourable Mr. Yassin, Honourable Mr. McIver, Honourable Ms. Furr, Honourable Mr. Jones, Honourable Mrs. Sawney, Mr. Getson, Honourable Mr. Nally, Honourable Mr. Long, Honourable Mr. Hunter, Mr. Yao, Mr. Stephan, Mr. Sear, Mr. Weeb, Mr. Boychenko, Mr. McDougall, Mrs. Petrovic, Mr. Lunty, Mr. Dick, Honourable Ms. Armstrong-Homenuk, Ms. DeYoung, Mr. Bouchard, Mr. Singh, and Ms. Lovely.
Mr. Chair, total for the amendment 12, total against 41.
The amendment has been defeated. We're back onto the main bill, Bill 46, Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act 2025. Any other members wishing to make comment, questions? The member for Edmonton, Beverly Clareview, has risen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to rise today to now speak, of course, against Bill 46, the Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act. I will confess to feeling a wee bit disappointed that my colleague's amendment was not passed. It's unfortunate because it was an important one. All of that is because this bill itself isn't an isolated measure, and in my view, it's part of a much longer pattern that's been going on at least for this session of the House, and certainly earlier as well. Indeed, it's part of a sustained effort on the part of this government to centralize control and shut Albertans out of their own democracy. And we have indeed, as I just mentioned, seen it before in Bills 33 and 34, the precursors to this one. The government made some sweeping changes as to how we handle freedom of information and privacy. And as we knew at the time, there was in fact some lack of depth in terms of the consultation. And in fact, the Information and Privacy Commissioner issued two rather scathing letters at the time that we were debating those bills. They warned that the bills made it harder for Albertans to access information, and that in fact they were in the process of creating new loopholes that allowed the government to hide communications, for instance, between political staff and the executive. But instead of heeding all of that very good advice, we find Bill 46 in front of us. The minister stood in this House a few weeks ago and told us that the bill makes minor but necessary amendments to ensure clarity, and that this is a key part of modernizing and strengthening Alberta's privacy and access laws, except it does that by inserting not so innocuous and not so minor amendments into the legislation, which is of course the reason for my colleague's amendment earlier. We talked earlier in the debate about the additions after Section 97. We talked about the additions in Section 2.9, and they're quite frankly the fact that they are dangerous, not only in terms of our democracy, but because it does collect all of that power in the hands of a few. It takes this legislature out of the equation. The minister also stated in his remarks that this delegation of authority is simply about the significant number of laws that reference the FOIP Act. You know, it's only just about updates, minor quibbles, except it isn't, because as I said before, these are not minor changes. This now becomes a bill that somewhat quietly hands this UCP government the power to rewrite the law without ever having to bring it back to this floor. And this is the floor, of course, where the work on behalf of all Albertans gets done. This isn't transparent. This certainly isn't about accountability, and it is not, as well, about how democracy is supposed to work.
And as one of my colleagues noted, many of my colleagues have noted, what we're dealing with here is what's known as a Henry VIII Clause amendment, Henry VIII clauses. These are provisions that let the government change laws unilaterally, without debate, without vote, without engagement from the public, without any sort of inkling as to how the people, those folks elected, could perhaps represent them in those sorts of instances. And as my colleague from Gold Bar talked about, we know their use isn't exactly new because they go back about 500-ish years to the reign of King Henry VIII, which is where it all started, when one man really was interested in giving himself the power to rule by decree. But of course, he ran into a wee bit of trouble with all of that as well. But that's exactly the kind of authoritarian power this bill is attempting to bring back. And despite the government's assurances, is, you know, don't worry, it'll be okay. We'll just fix the typos. It'll be good. It's just about grammar. I will say a little statement that we've heard often from a few members opposite: nothing could be further from the truth. Because if that were true, if that's really all they wanted, and I believe other folks have mentioned it, they could have used the Miscellaneous Statutes Amendment Act to do a little bit of that cleanup. That's the process that's generally used for some of those smaller technical corrections. Again, if it's quick, if it's truly meant for minor changes, but even that comes before this legislature. But again, Mr. Chair, this isn't just about administrative efficiency. It's about control. It's about bypassing this legislature, this House. It's about bypassing the will of Albertans and writing laws behind closed doors. And I know that other colleagues have alluded to it. You know, we've seen it before, and I myself was going down a wee bit of a trip along memory lane. In the past, I've talked about concerns when we were debating earlier bills like Bill 5 or Bill 13, Bill 18, Bill 20. It's a long, long list of bills where the power seems to be gathered in an increasingly smaller group of people, usually cabinet, but sometimes just the minister themselves. It's a pattern that is now, I think, will firmly be entrenched in the record of this government. And it's an unfortunate pattern because, as my colleagues have also talked about, it really does speak to the erosion of democracy, and that is not at all what this legislature is supposed to be about. Albertans obviously deserve better than these sorts of clauses put into these sorts of bills. They deserve much more from this government. They deserve to be part of the process. They deserve to know what changes are being made and why those changes are being made. And certainly when laws can be changed without debate, democracy itself is weakened. And beyond that, Mr. Speaker, in a time when it seems that many Albertans are having some questions of trust about this government, the government's asking us to trust them with all these new powers, but, you know, I would imagine the question on many Albertans' minds would be, why on earth should we? Because this government hasn't exactly engendered trust. Time and time again, the government's made promises to Albertans and then it's broken them. We already know about the Alberta pension plan. No, it's okay, we're not going to have any discussions about it, but then all of a sudden there it is. They introduced legislation to create an Alberta pension plan despite the fact that it was very clear and remains clear that Albertans do not want an Alberta pension plan to ever happen. And we still don't have access to the survey results. And in fact, an article that was published just a couple of months ago had this headline: OIPC launches third review of Alberta's response to FOIP inquiries seeking pension survey data. That's the third review, because the last time they got information, it was almost so thoroughly redacted they couldn't get any information at all. And there's a subheadline there, and it reads, this review is the third prompted by Postmedia following complaints that the province was stonewalling efforts to release the results of its survey on a potential provincial pension plan. There's certainly no openness and no transparency there, Mr. Chair. Exactly the same issue happened with the provincial police. It's promised to be scrapped now. It was quietly brought back, and of course, as we know, it's now not so quietly being brought back. And I wonder, if I was that sort of everyday Albertan out there, I would wonder, you know, can we trust this government not to use those Henry VIII clauses without restraint? I'm not entirely certain that we can. This is the same government that's currently facing what's being called one of the worst corruption scandals in Alberta's history. We have allegations of cabinet ministers intervening in decisions made by public servants, allegations of firing board members to cover up bloated surgical contracts, potentially handed to political allies. And certainly in this sort of context, a climate of secrecy, a climate of distrust. You know, I would think that this government wouldn't want to do anything to really upset or worry Albertans any further. I would think, you know, it's probably time to do a little restoration of trust rather than continue to erode it. And I really don't understand, really don't understand. We know it's harder now to appeal FOIP decisions. We know that entire categories of communication are hidden from public view. We know that mandatory breach reporting is an issue. And if you're taking all of that power, the power of this legislature, into that tiny, small group of people, it completely not just erodes the trust, but honestly, it kind of puts our entire system upon its ear. Decisions are supposed to be made here. Bills are supposed to be presented here. The will of the people is supposed to be debated here. It is not, and should not be something for an entirely small group of people who, as we know, have lost the trust of Albertans. And that is why I would urge members of this legislature to vote against Bill 46.
Any other members wishing to speak? Bill 46, the member for Sherwood Park has risen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy to rise and speak to Bill 46. I really appreciate the amendment that was brought in by the member from Edmonton Southwest. I really appreciate the comments from the member from Beverly Clairview. Also, you know, pivoting off of some of the comments made from other members, especially when we go back to those history lessons on Henry VIII. And don't be surprised, Mr. Speaker, if it comes up again. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to talk about something that might sound like a bit of a dusty relic from history, but in fact poses a very real and immediate threat to the health of our democracy, something called the Henry VIII legislation, which has been brought forward. And so we have some sort of moderate piece of legislation being brought in by the UCP, but it's, of course, got a poison pill in it, something that's going to stop us from passing this legislation in the House, because we need to stand up for our democracy. So let me explain a little bit about what I'm talking about with this Henry VIII clause, because I don't think it becomes tiring to hear about it. Henry VIII clauses are part of these modern pieces of legislation that give government and ministers the power to change or repeal primary legislation without having to go back to the legislature, coming back to here. In simple terms, it means the cabinet can rewrite laws behind closed doors without debate, without transparency, and without a vote from your elected representatives. So that tracks for the UCP. These clauses are creeping into our legislation in Alberta, and they're coming in with Bill 46. Under the UCP government, if passed, this kind of legislation would allow cabinet to override laws passed in the full legislature, a body made up of my fellow members here, by the voters. So let's consider now why this is such a problem, starting with the name. Why are they called Henry VIII clauses? Because Henry VIII of England, who ruled from 1509 to 1547, was notorious for centralizing power in the monarchy, bypassing the Parliament, and making decisions unilaterally. He didn't want to answer to anyone. Much like we've heard the Premier referred to as the Queen of Alberta, someone that doesn't want to answer to this legislature, doesn't want to answer to the people of Alberta. Henry VIII changed laws by proclamation, overriding the Parliament. And when the people stood in his way, they're often imprisoned, exiled, or executed. In no way do we think this is going to be a problem here in Alberta. But the role model for our Premier Trump, people are worried about people being exiled from the United States or being imprisoned. We even have that case of a Canadian that was trying to cross the border from Mexico into the United States and was held, I think, for 21 days by border security with no cause. So when we see this rise of authoritarianism or monarchy coming into our elected houses or in elected offices, we have to stand up against it here in our legislature. You might remember the King of England who had 6 wives. That's the legacy of that he's left, and it's led to some great musical, 6, worth seeing, playing in Calgary at the Citadel, May 18th to 21st. 2025. So I recommend everybody go and watch 6. Top-notch musical. Brings some humor and light to a terrible, terrible person, because his wives were ultimately probably wonderful people. But some of his infamous decisions, one of the most infamous ones, was to break away from the Catholic Church so he could annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, because she hadn't produced her male heir. What a terrible situation that a king could just do that. When the Pope refused, the king didn't get his divorce. He triggered a national religious upheaval. I've heard of other leaders trying to trigger national upheavals. King Henry VIII declared himself head of the Church of England, dissolved the monasteries, confiscated church lands, and executed dissenters, including his former Lord Chancellor Thomas More. The Minister of Finance might want to pay attention to some of the history here. All of this without democratic input. All of this because he wanted unchecked power. This is the kind of precedent that has created the term Henry VIII Clause, and which has found its way into Bill 46. Rulers deciding that they are above the rule, which again tracks for the UCP. Think also about how power can be used arbitrarily. We won't get too much more into the execution of his wives, but it is a dark and dark history. And again, a reminder, if you want to see a lighter side of that, Mr. Speaker, May 18th to 21st, Citadel in Calgary. 6, wonderful musical. Now, when modern legislation is compared to the powers wielded by that monarch, it's not a compliment, it is a warning. So let's fast forward to today. What are we seeing in Alberta's proposed legislation? What we're seeing is a shift towards this kind of executive power under the guise of efficiency or responsiveness. This UCP government is seeking powers that would allow ministers to bypass the legislative process. That means no public debate, no questions in question period. I'm sure that would be something the ministers would really love. No committee hearings, no input from the people. That also tracks. The UCP are allergic to accountability. And that's not how democracy is supposed to work. I mean, the corrupt care scandal has revealed to all Albertans how members of the Premier's inner circle think they are above the rules, and they continue to change our democratic rules and traditions in order to consolidate power and avoid accountability. And they cannot seem to help themselves when we ask them to be accountable for their actions in this legislature. For example, they did not like limits that ministers receive and the Premier gets on gifts. So they changed the law. Let's take the limit off gifts. We tried to warn them. This is a bad idea. And now we see they've received so many gifts that it has led to this corrupt care scandal. If you would listen, once in a while we are trying to help the government for this term and terms beyond. They wouldn't have known it, I guess, at the time when they passed Bill 8, but that having those limits would have helped them avoid a situation where going to hockey games with people was a bad idea when they're paying for it and expecting bloated contracts back from the government. It's a terrible idea. So, we've seen the challenges that come with unchecked power. We've seen the challenges that come with lack of accountability. We've seen challenges when you don't bring debate into this legislature. And you put everything into your cabinet minister's power just to make those decisions without shining the light on it. And it's not just a local concern. They could have looked at other jurisdictions. We've seen this dangerous kind of power in the United Kingdom during Brexit. Again, somehow these Henry VIII clauses are related to separation. But in Brexit, Parliament tried to grant themselves the power to amend laws quickly so they could deal with this exit out of the European Union. But it triggered outrage, government. The very foundation of British democracy was challenged, and the House of Lords called it just a constitutional sleight of hand. In Australia, we've seen similar clauses that created problems during COVID-19. It was the justification used there that the powers were just short-term justification to deal with the pandemic. But there are long-term implications, which is why you have emergency debate from time to time. It's how you deal with short-term problems. And in Ontario, we've seen with Doug Ford and Bill 195 and the scandal that led to with the lands that they were trying to take over and get rid of the Greenland barriers in Ontario. So I hear members wanting to join debate, and I think it's because maybe they're now understanding. Now they're understanding, maybe we have made some mistakes. Maybe we shouldn't just take tickets to hockey games because it's fun. Good idea. Maybe we should take responsibility as ministers of the Crown. No, it could be there is a problem. I don't want to believe that there is a problem at the core of the UCP, and I want to know it's just a few cabinet ministers that were misled, but somehow the other UCP backbenchers are supporting them in their choices. Once a government claims the ability to bypass democratic debate, it becomes easier for that power to grow. And future governments of any party will be tempted to use that power for reasons that are untoward and not a part of the original justification. So it's a slippery slope. And democracy doesn't erode all at once. It crumbles piece by piece each time we allow oversight to be ignored or public participation to be sidelined. We are a province of engaged, informed citizens. We want reasonable people making reasonable decisions in debate. We deserve better than backroom lawmaking. We deserve open debate. We deserve legislation that stands up to scrutiny, and we deserve representatives who are empowered, not sidelined by the laws that they are elected to uphold. So let me leave you with one thought. When King Henry VIII centralized power, he did so to serve himself, not the people. He rewrote laws, dissolved institutions, and removed dissenters so he could rule without interruption. It sounds familiar, it tracks today. So no one is asking for beheadings or royal decrees, I assume. But the spirit of unchecked authority is alive and well in Henry VIII clauses, and we provided an amendment that would have removed the Henry VIII clause from this legislation. And just like the 1500s, once power is taken from the people and handed to a small group behind closed doors, it's incredibly hard to get it back. Let's not let history repeat itself in Alberta. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Edmonton Riverview to speak.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to join debate on Bill 46, Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act 2025. So I'd just like to start by talking about some principles of democracy. And the reference for the others in the House, if they're interested, is I'm looking at Student Vote Canada, and they have 5 basic principles of any democracy. One is citizenship participation, accountability and transparency. Everyone has the right to human rights and equality. A democracy must follow the rule of law and free and fair elections. So, in one fell swoop, this bill seems to disregard, I would say, well, perhaps the others too, but at least 2 very specific principles of democracy. And I know that the UCP likes to describe themselves as champions for democracy, that they're doing so many things to make it a more democratic Alberta, but it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not true at all. And this legislation proves it. And if we look at section 3:1.3, it says, for the purposes of making any necessary changes as a result of this act, the Lieutenant Governor and Council may by regulation amend any act or any regulation filed on the Regulations Act. Oh, and let's not stop there. Let's go on and look at another one here. 2.9. For the purposes of making any necessary changes as a result of this act, the Lieutenant Governor and Council may, by regulation, amend any act or any regulation filed under the Regulations Act. So, you know, in sort of lawyer speak, that means, hey, we can do whatever we would like to do, and we don't have to actually present bills in the legislature. We can do it by regulation. And so that means that, guess what? The principles of democracy are not being followed. Citizens' participation, like how can citizens be aware of this if they're doing it all behind closed doors? And it's sweeping. It's like heinous. It's like got any legislation can be changed. I mean, give your heads a shake. It doesn't make any sense. And, you know, it certainly flies in the face of democratic principles and has no accountability or transparency. So that, you know, this government, of course, that's the fundamental aspect of democratic government, is that there's checks and balances, and that one of them is that legislation is presented in the Assembly transparently so that everyone can look at it, the media. You know, that's one of the pillars of our society, is that the media has access, we in the opposition have access, citizens have access as they're informed. It's just all very much part of a democratic process, but it seems like the members here don't seem to understand that. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will take my seat. Adjourned.
Thank you.
No, she has to move it to the committee report.
I will recognize Government Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I'd like to move that the committee rise and report progress on Bill 46.
Okay. Having heard the motion as proposed by the Honourable Government Whip, that the committee rise and report progress on Bill 46, the Information and Privacy Statutes Amendment Act 2025. Are you agreed? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. And that is carried. We will rise and report progress on Bill 46. Member for Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee of the Whole has had under consideration a certain bill. The committee reports progress on the following bill, Bill 46. Mr. Speaker, I wish to table copies of all amendments considered by the Committee of the Whole on this date for the official records in the Assembly.
Does the Assembly concur in the report? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. That is so ordered.
Under Government Bills and Orders for second reading, Bill 53, Compassionate Intervention Act. Adjourned debate, Mr. Getson.
The member from Lac St. Anne Parkland has 15 minutes left to speak if you so wish. Are there any others wishing to speak on Bill 53? The member for Edmonton West Henday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak against Bill 53, not because I do not believe in recovery or treatment for addictions. We see it almost every single day, or it affects our families deeply, some more than others. And I'm one of those that it affects very intimately. I have close family members that are in active addiction. I so desperately want to help them out of their spiral of addiction. And so do many, many members of my family. I've lost relative after relative to overdose, accidental and suicidal in the last 5 years. To say that I truly want an end to this comes from a deeply personal space. And I don't speak against this bill because I don't think we need solutions. I speak against it because it does not take into account Indigenous lived realities. It will most certainly create more traumatic turmoil on Indigenous peoples in this province. Indigenous peoples already have the strike of intergenerational trauma that is passed down from residential schools and perpetuated by ongoing genocidal practices by this government through the ongoing removal of Indigenous children from their homes, or this epidemic of drug poisoning, deaths, or the treatment of those children and youth in care as red tape. Add on to that trauma with the apprehension, or let's call it what it really is, incarceration of folks with addictions into recovery communities, including with the help of police, then you have a truly berated and broken people who are harmed further, despite any compassion that this government tries to intimate it is extending to folks with addictions. Because, Mr. Speaker, I cannot, in good conscience, sit here and endorse this bill that will force my people into carceral institutions called recovery communities. Because let's face it, it is my people who are largely overrepresented in addictions and mental health crises because of these ongoing historical injustices. But even if we were serious about getting folks the help they need to address their addictions, wait times for recovery communities are on average 3 months long. According to the minister, as of March 2025, Recovery Alberta was at a 93% bed occupancy rate, while addictions treatments was at 90% utilization, with 140 detox beds in Recovery Alberta. And while I've heard this minister talk about the promised recovery community treatment centers on Indigenous nations, I'm talking about the Kainai Nation, Enoch Cree Nation, Tsuut'ina Nation, Siksika Nation, and the MNA's Smoky Lake facility. The last I've checked, these facilities are no closer to treating Indigenous peoples with addictions that are so needed now, and the picture is getting bleaker and bleaker as the days go by. My people are dying because of opioids 8.4 times higher than non-Indigenous peoples. This is reflected in the decrease in our life expectancy, which has fallen 20 years below provincial average for non-Indigenous people. I mentioned that I've lost family members. I've lost 4 in the last 2 years directly related to addictions. And I'm worried about losing more as this epidemic grips my people. The minister himself referenced that Indigenous peoples, First Nations peoples, go to funeral after funeral after funeral because of this incredibly preventable crisis that is not being addressed with genuine compassion. Because let's be clear, Mr. Speaker, incarcerating folks against their will is not compassionate. It just isn't. Especially when Indigenous peoples are already over-incarcerated in Alberta. This is a call to action that this government has shown they're not interested in addressing whatsoever. We're adding more people to that list. And I would be remiss if I did not talk about the causation of these addictions. My people are broken because of government actions. My people continue to grapple with mental health concerns. And sadly, this bill does not address the historical realities of Indigenous peoples in this province that was caused upon us by government actions, including the residential schools. I think this quote bears increasing significance today from former Prime Minister John A. Macdonald. When the school is on the reserve, the child lives with its parents, who are savages. And though he may learn to read and write, his habits and training mode of thought are Indian. He is simply a savage who can read and write. It has been strongly impressed upon myself, as head of the department, that Indian children, and I want to stress this part, should be withdrawn as much as possible from the parental influence. And the only way to do that would be to put them in central training industrial schools where they will acquire the habits and modes of thought of white men. And I put the stress on the point of withdrawing the Indigenous person from the influence, in the case above, the parental influence. In this case, the influence of their addiction. And I'm very careful about not just predicating this on any specific substance, because I've heard the minister refer to mental health conditions that could easily be read into this piece of legislation for its broad application. Mr. Speaker, this is unacceptable. I know the members opposite think that this bill will help, but I just don't see how. If we're not addressing the historical background in which Indigenous peoples find themselves, we are not solving the problem. I quoted Sir John A. Macdonald, and that quote specifically, because I do see the parallels between forced removal of children from their families to this. We need to remember that people affected under this legislation is someone's child. My cousins are my siblings, and the children of my aunties and my uncles. In our language, our aunties and our uncles are our mothers and our fathers. There's no difference. Removing them from our community and the circle of support that is proven to help with overcoming addictions, the ability to walk the red road with ceremony or cultural activities like harvesting, hunting, or just being in community goes a long way in recovery. I've seen that work. I know it works. I've seen some of my closest friends and relatives overcome addictions when their recovery is connected directly to culturally relevant supports. While I do hear the minister that there will be a mandatory Indigenous person on the commission, I'm immediately aware of the fact that the majority of the people that will be affected by the compassionate interventions will be Indigenous peoples. Why else would we have a dedicated person on the commission? This is not lost on anyone on this side of the House, but Mr. Speaker, that should cause immediate alarm for all of us. Why do we need a specific Indigenous member? Well, I just laid it out because my people will be disproportionately affected by this act when it comes into force. But that leads me to the fact that this also means that the apprehension process and the Compassionate Intervention Committee occupies a quasi-judicial body. While the minister has mused that there is no criminal justice system connections to this, in my professional opinion, it does. It will not escape legal scrutiny. I know this, because in Canada, and indeed in Alberta, there are sentencing principles that must be considered when an Indigenous person appears before a judge or a decision maker during sentencing. And Mr. Speaker, those are the Gladue principles, and later clarified by IPLE. Those decisions come from the Supreme Court of Canada, and they are law here in Alberta. Under the apprehension sections of the Compassionate Intervention Act, under Section 17, Sub 1C, yes, Mr. Speaker, despite the presentation from the minister, the use of a quasi-judicial body will attract administrative reviews, which this government is not free from scrutiny of. I know this government is allergic to accountability, as my good friend from Sherwood Park just said a few moments ago in this House. But Mr. Speaker, the decisions of the Compassionate Intervention Commission will attract administrative review. And I know the decisions of this commission will be reviewed, and the principles of sentencing will be strongly considered in these administrative decisions because of the connection to incarceration, which has been named apprehension. No matter the word, Mr. Speaker, apprehension, arrest, holding, sentencing, whatever you want to call it, the fact that police are entitled to do this under the Compassionate Intervention Act is a prima facie, to use a legal word, the minister, I know, understands because he referred to it himself in second reading. Maybe he got it from the government's lawyer, but it is a prima facie.
Point of order has been called.
This is the second time today that member has accused a member of this side of committing a crime. Mr. Speaker, that is out of order. You cannot say the member perjured himself. No, Mr. Speaker, this is ridiculous. If the member says that the minister perjured himself in second reading, it's ridiculous. 23 H.I.J., Mr. Speaker. Earlier today, the member said that the Premier committed treason, which is a crime. Now perjury? Give me a break.
Deputy Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the member was engaging in very respectful debate. I think speaking to a very serious issue that has a deep impact on him and Indigenous peoples in this province. Now, I did not hear the member say the word perjure, as the House Leader is claiming. What the member has said is that he was using the term prima facie. Now, of course, Mr. Speaker, it is up to you to determine what was stated, what was heard, but I did not hear that member use that particular word. I will leave it to you, Mr. Speaker, to determine your rule.
From what my recollection, the member said prima facie. And I did not hear the word perjury, as has been alluded to. And so with that, I do not believe that this is a point of order. And so I will ask the member to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But it is a prima facie an arrest, and the sentencing of Indigenous peoples will not be escaped by legal scrutiny along the same sentencing principles along with criminal justice principles. Having an Indigenous member on the Commission does not make this scrutiny go away, and I urge this government to seriously consider the effects of this legislation will have. Long legal challenges, protracted litigation will cast uncertainty on this real relief that Albertans are looking for on this very serious issue. It is an issue that I so desperately want to address with my own loved ones, but I know that the way this regime is currently arranged will not do that. It will not, Mr. Speaker. It will hurt my people, it will tear families apart, and it will fracture communities that are already struggling with the effects of divisiveness. Mr. Speaker, while Albertans are asking for real relief on this, we know that the removal of folks, such as those who experience houselessness with the presupposition of addiction issues, is also quite concerning. We're asking police to be social workers, and they're not equipped to do so. When it comes to the police also arresting these people who, let's not kid ourselves, Mr. Speaker, they're also largely Indigenous peoples because of a myriad of causations, including mental health issues, housing issues that this government is not seriously addressing, or at bare minimum, getting those beds open on more First Nations and Métis settlements. Mr. Speaker, we need a multimodal approach to this, and this bill, unfortunately, does not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to adjourn debate. Thank you. That's all mine.
Are there any others wishing to speak to Bill 53? Seeing none, I am prepared to call the question. The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addiction has moved second reading of Bill 53, Compassionate Intervention Act. Does the Assembly agree to the motion for second reading? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. The motion is carried.
Bill 53, Compassionate Intervention Act, is now read a second time.
Government House Leader.
The Assembly be adjourned until 1:30 Monday.
Having heard the motion from Government House Leader to move adjournment of the Assembly till Monday at 1:30, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. That motion is carried and the Assembly stands adjourned until Monday afternoon at 1:30.